Okay, and now we're going to talk about presentations. No matter what kind of presentations you need to make, all of your presentations will have a beginning, will have an end. So what we're going to do now is cover exactly that. Those things that no matter what kind of presentation you're giving, you will need. So we started talking about giving the big picture, the overview of the presentation. I'd like to take you through today's presentation. We are going to discuss. The presentation is divided into 5-part sections. It will last 10 minutes. Something else that is a good idea to do right now is to set some ground rules. For example, about questions. There are two possibilities. Either you want people to ask questions and to interrupt you, or you would prefer people to wait till the end. So it's a good moment to say so now. So let's look at some sentences that will help you do that. Please feel free to interrupt me with any questions you may have during the presentation. I'd like to ask you to keep any questions you may have for the end of the presentation. Introductions are over. Let's start with the main body. Let's start with, we can begin by talking about. To begin with, if you need to end a section, well, that's all for this topic. That covers everything on this topic. Something else that has to do with this walking and being a tour guide is when I want to go from one part to another, I move. So another word that is useful to remember is the word move. You can use it like this. For example, moving right along, moving on, moving forward, or that brings me to the second section. That brings us to the second section. Emphasis. Do you all know what emphasis is? When I want to betonen, when I want to make an idea very, very strong, well, I can emphasize, I can stress, I can highlight. Sometimes in some presentations we need to make proposals. So what actions can we use to describe proposals? Recommend, empfehlen, suggest, vorschlagen, propose, vorschlagen. So I suggest, we suggest, I recommend, I propose, we recommend, we propose. My suggestion, my recommendation, my proposal is, our suggestion, our recommendation, our proposal is. Thanks to technology, we can also show people graphics and visuals. Let's have a look at the most common ones. So some ways of talking about visuals. Let's take a look at, I would like to show you. You might even want to check that your audience can see. Can you see? Is it clear? Some ways of describing visuals. This graphic shows, refers to, as you can see from this graph representing, if you could just take a look at this chart. Looking at this chart, we can see that many times we make comparisons. We compare, vergleichen. So, useful vocabulary that we need. Compare, vergleichen. This compares A with B. Let's compare. Here you see a comparison between. Let's signal the end. That brings us to the end. That ends my talk. Okay, that ends my talk. That covers, again, that covers all I wanted to say today. And it might be a good idea to summarize, zusammenfassen. So some signal words to summarize are to sum up, in brief. So which are the activities? I would like to summarize. I would like to go over. I would like to recap. We have discussed many points today. Let me quickly summarize the principal points. I like to quickly go over the main points of today's topic. Before we end, let me briefly recap what we have discussed here today. Finishing, concluding. To conclude, in conclusion, I like to finish by saying this could be a point when I want to invite some questions. Are there any questions? So now, I'd be interested to hear your comments. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I particularly think that questions are always good. what does a question say to me? Well, it says that the person has been listening and has been thinking about something. So I always invite questions. I always want questions. And I sincerely say, that's a good question. Because I don't think any questions are really bad. Very, very often I thank the person for the questions and I say, thank you for that question. Or thank you for asking that question. That's a really good one. It allows me to address the problem and offer you some solutions. Other ways of saying understand are catch, follow. So, if I understand you correctly, you want to know, you're asking me about X, right? I love to say, tell me more. I'm not sure I have understood your question. Could you repeat that? So, I give my answer, and then I want to check that the person is happy, is satisfied with my answer, right? Because I don't know if what I said answered the question or not. So, one possibility is to ask, does that answer your question? Is that clear now? In English, it's not a problem to say clear. So I could finish then by saying thank you all very much for taking the time to listen to this presentation. I think that's about it. That covers it all. That's about it. I think that's about it. That's all, right? I think that's about it. I'd like to thank you all for coming in today.